Hi there, my name is Sophia Nichols, and this is for EDCT 6012, Teaching and Learning Online, and this is my screencast, a little overlook of my course that I created. The course I created is for Spanish 2. I got inspiration to do this from my recent internship classroom of middle schoolers that I was working with. It was Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. So this class is essentially has taken inspiration from the textbook that they use. However, I wanted to incorporate more resources and more practice to deepen students' learning process of vocabulary and grammar. I'll give a short little glance at the syllabus I've created. It has my contact information, course learning targets, and then the 6 weeks at a glance, or in this course I created 4 modules, but essentially it goes through these different topics that you will see. So it's broken down into vocabulary, grammar, culture, and then what their assessment would be. I formulated this class to be mainly focused on vocabulary and grammar, as I wanted to make it a flipped learning classroom or a blended classroom where most of the activities that students do on the online course section is for activities of recalling of what they've learned in class, and then they're able to apply and analyze what they've learned from their online work and apply that into the classroom through communication, because that's essentially what foreign language is. You can't really have meaning or purposeful communication that well in an online setting, personally, to me, if it's not in a Teams meeting or something like that. So these are all my different modules that I had. Mostly everything's in Spanish, but I'm gonna translate it here for the screencast. I have a lot. It looks like a lot in here, but it's really not too bad. It's broken down into the modules each have 3 different links to videos of the vocabulary list they have, the actual list of the vocabulary, and then I use Quizlet to make flashcards for each of the vocab list. I really like Quizlet just because it allows you to have a lot of different options to practice the vocab, whether it's flashcards or if you want to assess yourself or use it through gamification, things like that. And then I included some activities for each of the modules, either 2 to 3, that work with the vocab and have students review the vocab in more of a sense of where they can apply the vocab they learned. So for example, here, this is a video I found of, it's called Coffee Break Spanish, and it is native speakers talking about sports, about what their favorite sports are. So students will watch this video and then they have to write down 3 things that they find interesting to discuss for class the next day. So certain things like that. And then we have certain things like grammar practices. So in this module, students are working with some changing verbs. So I've included some practice here, as well as a chart to help them out. I know the writing looks messy, but I provided them with sentences that they can form, and then they would conjugate the verbs here, for example. So this verb empezar means to start, and they would conjugate that based on this. So yeah, here. Yep. So that's a little look into that. And then the assessments kind of vary. I try to do diverse assessments. I don't typically like just paper and pencil assessments. So I believe for the sports assessment, I had them. Oh, I'll need to fix that because that's not right. I had them essentially make like a sales pitch, or they had to make like a trifold board advocating for people to join their team, their sports team. And then they had to share a story of a time that they won, or like a player like kicked a goal to like win them the game, something like that. But I'll have to fix that. Same thing here. This is module 6 of well-being. So here we talked about emotions and then minor like illnesses, and then the grammar here is different verbs and then different pronouns of how different grammar structures work. This is something that I thought was kind of fun and cool to do. We did a similar activity to this in a early childhood class that I work with, but students essentially had to create, like, the activity was called Moody Colors, and they had to create a board of feelings they felt from the week. So I thought this was a great way to get students to be introduced to how they can describe how they're feeling and different things. So they can either create faces, or if they have things that remind them of the feelings, such as they could draw a rainbow for being happy, different things like that. And for that assessment, I had students doing a role play. So they would create a skit of, they would be in a group of 3. And one person would be the doctor, one person would be the patient, and then the other person would be the pharmacist. So whoever's the patient would have to identify some symptoms they had, and then they would go through the motions of going through the doctor and the pharmacist. And with the role play, students should be creative as possible with using props made or certain things like that. Next we have vacations. So for one of the writing practices I have students doing for this, they have to write a couple sentences describing their dream vacations. So they can choose to travel to any place and describe their perfect day. And they should talk about things that they bring on their trip and the activities that they would do on their vacation. Again, as well with vocab practice, and then grammar practice. And the assessment for this, I believe, is making a travel brochure. Yeah, making a travel brochure. So students will create a handheld trifold with this, and then using the vocab and grammar they've learned. And also adding in that students can write up reviews about other guests who stayed at their chosen vacation spots, or they can even write their own reviews to convince people to come to their vacation spot. And then the last module I had students doing was en tu tiempo libre, which is in your free time. So talking about free time. Excuse me. This chapter is kind of broad. It focuses on movies, music, art, essentially any hobbies or interests that people may have. So one of the things that I love to talk about with students is music, and this is a similar thing to March Madness. So potentially this unit could be around March, and students could get to engage in music that's written by Hispanic singers, and they get to vote on which songs they like the best, and it's essentially a March Madness bracket. So that's kind of a fun way to incorporate things they do in their free time, so their hobbies, to the classroom. And then again, this is another fun one. This is about people in Spain talking about their free time. Video won't connect. However, they talk about their free time, and that's a good way to get students to view and listen to the target language from native speakers. And then once again, having students work with grammar activities. These are all pretty straightforward through all of this. And then some of these links are just examples of what students should be looking for and what they should be doing. So this is the preterite, the past tense of regular verbs for our types of verbs in Spanish. As well as the final assessment I have students do is a presentation. It's just a simple presentation of them talking about their hobbies and what they enjoy to do in their free time. And they should also intertwine this assessment to vocabulary from Module 6, which talks about well-being and emotions, referring to how these activities/hobbies make them feel, as well as who they partake the activities with. And yes, that is my course. So thank you so much.